Today, in a silent federal building, a small group of lawmakers sat before glowing computer screens, screens filled with millions of pages that tell one of the darkest stories of our time. The Justice Department had opened access to a massive collection of previously unredacted files tied to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Not to the public, not to the victims, only to certain members of Congress. What they saw, they say, was disturbing not only for what was revealed, but for what still remains hidden. Representative Thomas Massie was among the first to speak after reviewing the files. His concern was measured but unmistakable. "What bothered me," he said, were the names of at least 6 men still redacted, who appear to be directly implicated simply by their presence in these documents. Representative Ro Khanna echoed that unease. Even now, he said, far too much remains concealed. And then came a deeper, more unsettling account. Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida described the experience of accessing the records. "You don't simply open a folder," he explained. "You enter a near-empty floor of a Justice Department building. You sit in a room with 4 computers, you're handed a 24-page instruction manual, and in front of you are 2.7 million documents, searchable only if you already know exactly what you're looking for. There's no realistic way to go through this," Moskowitz said. "Unless you already know the batch number. Unless you already know the secret." What he did manage to see left a lasting impression. He described evidence of a worldwide sex trafficking network, men and women, operating across borders, sourcing young girls for Jeffrey Epstein. Messages, emails, conversations that spoke of children as logistics, as deliveries. "Paris, Russia, the Czech Republic," he said quietly. "People talking about dropping a child off." The words, he said, were gross. The casualness unbearable. Even more troubling, many of the names connected to these communications remain hidden behind thick black bars redactions, so heavy they feel intentional. When lawmakers asked Justice Department staff why certain documents were still redacted, the answer was simple and alarming. "That's how we received them." The Epstein Files Transparency Act was clear. Redactions were allowed only to protect victims' identities or ongoing investigations. But what lawmakers saw today, they argue, goes far beyond that. Ro Khanna estimates 70 to 80% of the material he reviewed was still redacted, including FBI interview summaries, where survivors reportedly described who assaulted them. In just 2 hours, Khanna says he identified 6 men, some with photographs, some based in the United States, others abroad whose identities had no clear legal justification for being concealed. "If we found 6 in 2 hours," he said, "there are likely many more." The deeper concern, he believes, is not just redaction, but timing. Much of this material, he says, appears to have been heavily scrubbed back in March, before Congress passed the transparency law. Those already redacted files were then handed to the Justice Department, which posted them as is. A process that looks less like disclosure and more like inheritance of a cover-up. Maxwell, clemency, and silence. Hovering over all of this is Ghislaine Maxwell. Her attorney now says she is willing to speak fully and honestly, but only if she is granted clemency by President Trump. To several lawmakers, that sounds less like cooperation and more like a transaction. "She spent hours answering questions for the Deputy Attorney General," Khanna said. But when it came to Congress Republicans or Democrats, she took the fifth on everything. Even when asked questions that would not incriminate her. Even when asked simply who else was involved. Her message, lawmakers say, was clear. "I know more. Pay me." "That's not how justice works," Khanna said, visibly outraged. "She should be returned to a maximum security prison. There should be no deal to bail anyone out." Questions also remain about why Maxwell was recently moved out of a maximum security facility, and who authorized that move. What was exchanged? What was promised? And what does the administration know that the public still does not? What comes next? Attorney General Pam Bondi is expected to testify before the House Judiciary Committee this week. Lawmakers from both parties say they intend to press her hard. They are demanding unredacted documents. They are demanding names. And above all, they are demanding that the truth finally belong to the public, not just to quiet rooms and guarded screens. Because at the center of all these files, beyond the politics, beyond the power, are victims whose stories have waited far too long to be fully seen. And tonight, the question lingers. Is this transparency or just another shadow?